right, we'll call this meeting.
Coming in when you're still on fire.
So first order of business is to approve the changes to the agenda that was sent out to everyone. So I entertain a motion to approve this new agenda.
So move, Mr. Chairman.
Motion on the floor, properly second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Next up, approval for minutes of October 21, 2021.
Approval.
Got a motion on the floor.
Second.
Second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Now we'll go to Mr. Chad, request for approval for requested guaranteed maximum price number one.
All right, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. As we talked about last board meeting, we were going to be coming with you guys for a GMP to get some of these long lead time items procured and on order and committed to with the contractor. That was, we completed that, or they completed that task, got that to us. Some of the pricing was significantly higher than they hoped for. Some was not quite as bad as they feared it could be. But as a whole, everything was up from previous cost estimates. And I don't think anyone is surprised by that, given the environment we're in. And I think it's, if we were to wait 6 months or 9 months to buy this equipment, we would pay more for it 6 or 9 months from now. So we have completed that, and the amount to be poured, I don't have it on here, is a little over $7 million, which includes the new 3 megawatt generators, some ancillary equipment to support those generators, and then also the 3 required new blowers that would go into the blower building. This will be a case where Crowder Construction will be purchasing this equipment that they will be installing. So it removes that confusion at times where it's an owner-owned piece of equipment that the contractor is installing. And you know, this is probably the most straightforward GMP that we're going to have on this project. But still, with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions anyone has with this particular GMP.
Seems like a dumb question, but the way we've been dealing with price increases on projects, this will in fact lock in the price.
Correct. If I remember correctly, and Thomas, you may be correct me, I think they've already thought that they would be stored at the manufacturer. Is that correct?
Yeah. So these are coming over from Finland. The blowers they're coming over from Finland. But they have a facility, I believe, in New York, somewhere in the Northeast, and they can store them there and maintain them there as far as rotating the pieces that need to be rotated. So I believe that's what we ended up with.
We've tried to work through this negotiation and acquiring these where we protect our warranty the best we can with them coming early, and we try not to get that point where it's installed and we're already 9 months into the warranty period or whatever. There may be some slight amount of that, but we tried to protect ourselves from that. But in this current environment, it's hard to get everything perfect. So the last thing we want to do is be sitting there for 6 months just waiting.
We have Charlotte's Water's money.
We do not have their money yet, and we are still working on getting the amendment approved by them and us. So we are currently working on getting that amendment approved, but if they don't agree to do it, we'll have an extra million gallons of capacity we can give out. So I assume they'll do it. I did send an email this morning reminding them that was critical, especially with us going out for bond funding soon. It's in place.
Both of these this equipment that we're purchasing here, the upfront money that we have to put up, it's pretty small. That the major chunk of changes at delivery of the product. I would imagine if they're going to be storing, if it's completed and they're delivering it to be stored on their site, they're probably going to want some money at that point. But the final biggest chunk would be when we actually take delivery of it. So there's not a lot of upfront money on these.
Just reading through some of that paperwork you had forwarded, Chad, it looked to me like the lead time on the generators is quite a bit longer than on the compressors. And it looked like they were talking about maybe 36 weeks.
On which, on
the generators, I thought that was.
Correct, yes.
And I assume they're building those.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah. And those work fine with our construction.
Right.
They're still gonna be here well before they are needed to be set in place and put in operation. So the kicker is, we all know 36 weeks is probably more likely to be 56 weeks than it is to be 35 weeks. You know what I mean? It's gonna slip by 50% before it's probably on time or faster than what they expect. And we wanted to make sure that we didn't get caught by that. We would rather have them there 6 months, 9 months before needed than vice versa.
Michael, after this, we use these system development fees, this 4.5 million. What's our status beyond that? How much do we have?
We're getting down to about 3 million left. At that point, we'll probably have to either start budgeting reserves or budgeting, if we're confident of the revenue bonds.
How much in reserve? Ballpark.
Our cash,
Before we, to maintain our appropriate reserves.
well, I think with the understanding that we're going to reimburse ourselves when we issue the bonds, we could probably go about 20 million out of pocket, about half of our reserves.
There's no more questions. That's if you approve the award of GMP one to Crowder Construction.
So moved.
Motion on the floor. Second. Second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Carries. Now it's time to pay.
73 pages back is
Wow.
after all the description of the project is the capital project ordinance amendment and the amendment to the system development fee fund, asking to transfer for the total project $7,536,000. System development fees would be $4,522,000. And the amount from Charlotte Water would be $3,014,000. That represents our 60% and their 40% of the project.
So move to fill the request.
We got a motion on the floor.
Second.
Probably seconded. All in favor, say aye. To flow factor reduction. Chad, you're up. I do.
All right. Well, I have several items, mostly good news, some not perfect news, but we did after 7 months of back and forth, up and down, around many corners, have received a tentative approval from the state for a flow factor reduction to 80 gallons per day per bedroom for all municipalities in Cabarrus County. So that would be a single uniform or unified rate for all jurisdictions. As most of you guys have heard and recall, and probably have thought about way too much, originally we asked for 70 gallons per day per bedroom. Worked through many options. This last option, I think we got to 7. Is that correct? Yeah, option 7, which I would say it's comical, but it's not very funny. So I don't think that's the right term. But to give you an idea of kind of how that impacts us, the 70 gallons per day per bedroom was under current conditions would get us about 1.2 million gallons a day of capacity to open up with a 70 gallons per day per bedroom. The 80 gets us just a hair over 1 million gallons a day. So it is an impact of not quite 200,000 gallons a day. So definitely not minor. It probably falls somewhere between minor and fairly significant. I will say though, to go along with that, some very good news that I have is that our flows this fall have drastically reduced at the wastewater treatment plant, as we've been quite dry for the last 60, 75 days or so. To the point that currently our average daily flow is 18.1 at the plant for the month. That compares to 21.5 in November, or 23.5 last November. Okay, so as recently as the end of August, we were basically running dead even from our flows in 2020 through that point of 2021. We're at this point, as of yesterday's flow, we're about 600,000 gallons a day less than we were at this point last year. Along with that, December's flow last year was a little over 23 million gallons a day. I will say with current conditions, as dry as we've got and groundwater levels getting to where they are, it's difficult for me to see us being over 23 million gallons a day next month. Does not mean that could not happen, but that is difficult for me to see. So what's important to know, if we were 23 million gallons a day next month, it did get wetter, we did see more flow, we would still have 600,000 gallons of new capacity open up in January immediately because of reduced flows. If we were to continue at, say, 19 next month, that number would be closer to 750, 800,000 gallons of new capacity that would open up in January. So that is a very significant number that will be available immediately in January to be divided up as the sewer allocation policy outlines. So that is very good news. So it does help some with the fact of the 80 versus 70. We're giving up a little bit there, but we're getting it now. We're getting that million gallons now. We are missing out on that 200,000 gallons, but we know we're going to be getting somewhere 600,000 to 800,000 that we really weren't counting on 2 months ago. That we really didn't know that we could feel confident about as well. So it really takes that number more like the 1.6, 1.8 that will be available. Also, it's important to note the projects that have come online from July 1 through the end of this year will also become available in January, as an end of January, as new capacity. That could be 300, 400. I don't think it'll be over 500,000, but that could push us up, that number up over 2 million gallons by the end of January that's available to be allocated out to the jurisdictions. That doesn't solve all of our problems, but it certainly keeps things moving. And then I would imagine in July, we will be able to take projects that have come online between January and July and hopefully have some capacity there to allocate as long as our flows aren't dramatically up over the previous year. So it would be my recommendation to the board that we accept this number that we're not necessarily really happy with. We definitely do not agree with the math and science and path that we took to get to it. That definitely makes it a little bit more difficult to stomach accepting it because we still believe it's too high. We do. But it does get us the number now. It gets us moving. And then we should find ourselves in a position with a much more favorable data set to go back and do this again. There is no time limit. We can go back 18 months from now, a year from now, 2 years from now, and do the same exercise again and get this number reduced to 65, 70, whatever that number may would be. Two things that would be working for us there is potentially different staff that we would be involved with would be one that would be a little more reasonable for us to work with, and two would be better data sets as hopefully we move away from some of these record groundwater levels. So with that, I'll open it up for discussion. Any questions, comments that anyone has on anything I just shared?
Judge, you said it's a tentative approval from the state. Is that based on us coming back and saying, yes, we will accept this at 80 gallons?
It's based on us making a new formal submittal, the document which is ready. And then we've got to have new letters from each of the jurisdictions in WSACC as you submitted the first time. That included a request for 70 gallons per day per bedroom. So we have to have a new letter that basically says 80 gallons per day per bedroom. The staff has said that they will approve that if submitted. So they've already seen the technical memorandum. They know the math. So, but I told them that I wanted some assurance that that would be approved if we submitted it, and they said yes.
So is there any chance that this may be a little retroactive as well? For projects that we've already allocated paper?
Yeah, that's where the capacity comes from. That's where the million gallons a day comes from. Is from retroactively projects that are on paper committed, but are not yet flowing to the plant.
We'll also use the 80 going forward.
Correct.
Chad, did I understand you to say that we didn't agree with the calculations that they had done? Did I hear, is that? Let me see if I can ask the question a different way. Are you saying that we think we should have had the 70, and so therefore we don't agree with the numbers that created the 80? Or are you saying that the numbers that they used to create the 80 are suspect? And as a result of that, but we just go ahead and accept it anyway?
No, that's a good question. The methodology in the administrative code says, do this math and then apply a subjective adjustment to it. And we did the math and I applied my subjective judgment to it, consistent with other municipalities where we've done this. And the state kind of said, not only are we not going to follow your subjective judgment, we're going to do different math. And they said, to calculate it, that's where the 7 different ways of calculating it were. They said, try it these different ways and submit that. And I calculated it 4 different ways. And then they said, no, we don't like those after all. Do 2 more different ways. And I submitted that. I said, no, we don't like those either. We want you to use the 7th methodology, which is basically to take the second wettest month instead of the wettest month and then average these things. And basically what they were doing was coming up with a new methodology that resulted in a rate. They realized that they could live with 80. So let's do something that comes up with 80. So the math that they were doing wasn't incorrect. They weren't really following their own rules. But that's been the case for 6 months now. I mean, I submitted I thought was the reasonable technical approach in April. So we've been off of that rail for a long time. So it's not that we think that they did bad math. They're just making it up as they go along. So the fight isn't about correcting their math. The fight is that they're doing something that they feel comfortable with. And I don't mind a fight, but let's fight smart. Fight.
So I guess what's concerning is there are other jurisdictions that are asking for these adjustments. I mean, Charlotte Water's in process, right?
I read where they're asking for 60.
Yeah.
Pursuing 60.
Now, there's a difference between those two scenarios. And the difference is that, as I described, the statute, or excuse me, the administrative code says, do this calculation and then apply a subjective adjustment for wet weather. In Charlotte's case, they didn't need that adjustment for wet weather. They just did the math, and they have a relatively new system tributary to this side of their system, tributary to you. So that relatively new system doesn't have a whole lot of infiltration and inflow. We have systems that have a lot of infiltration and inflow in them because they're much older. And so we have this peak flow that we were trying to attenuate by making a reasonable adjustment. And that was where those 2 methodologies diverge. And we've seen both cases before, leaky systems and non-leaky systems. And that's a fundamental disagreement that we have about the interpretation of the administrative code and the intent of the administrative code. But we lost that fight with the state staff long ago. So my recommendation is we got them at least to 80, from 120 to 80. We think we ask for 70. Strictly mathematically, I could justify 50. Never going to get there. They've already said that 60 or 65 is the lowest they'll ever go. Take my suggestions, take the 80, collect a new data set, get back into a normal weather pattern, do some projects that show infiltration, inflow reduction to reduce some of those spikes, then come back to the state and say, look, this is better than it used to be. We'd like to have 65. And then 2023, 2024, another couple 100,000 gallons, that kind of technique. So, but I think now to fight it is just it's a fight now.
Have we ever asked for 60? In any of the applications we ever made, did we ever ask for a number
Well,
60?
we've only made one formal request, and that was for 70.
And the reason I'm asking that question is because I have 2 letters or emails from Andrew Stipple, who is Senator Newton's assistant on these technical issues. And he makes reference to the idea that DEQ thought we had asked for 60 somewhere along the way. And I said to Andrew, I've never heard the term that we've ever asked for 60 before. He said, well, the department thinks that we have asked for 60 originally, and they weren't willing to go down that low. And they thought we were really trying to fool them or something along the way. And I said, I don't believe any of that's true.
No, we never asked for 70.
Yeah, I know we've always
There were
asked
some
for,
of these illustrations that had numbers that were 60 and lower. In fact, one of the illustrations that they asked us to do, methodologies that we did was in the 50s. And that's when we take out all the storm events and just look at the normal domestic wastewater flow levels. And realistically, the normal domestic wastewater flow levels are closer to 50 or 55 gallons per day per bedroom, in reality. But we never asked for that.
I think in theory, there's a good chance that Charlotte Water asked for 60 in their submittal this summer. I think there's a good chance that somewhere along the way, and in their submittal, it references flow that comes to WSAC, Charlotte Water flow that comes to the Rocky River plant. And I think there's a reasonable chance that somebody latched on to that and Rocky River, WSAC, 60 gallons per day, but that was a Charlotte request. That was not our request.
There's been ample miscommunication over the last 6 months. They don't.
I guess I would doubt the idea that they were going to allow us to make a new request anytime near in the future. That is, I mean, I think both of you suggested a few moments ago that there was a possibility we could make a decision and ask for a new request 8 months, a year, whatever time frame. It's not limited by anything other than with the difficulties that we've had and the length of time that they stretched this whole thing out. I think the moment we say yes, they're not planning on talking to us again about flow factor adjustment in a long period of time. And as a result of that, I think the idea of coming back to them with another request a year from now or 6 months or whatever time frame is likely to fall on deaf ears. I don't think they're going to have any comfort with dealing with us again on this issue, especially since we had to go the political route to get them to really answer us along there. So I can't imagine that they're going to ever make another adjustment.
I don't know that I agree with that, to be quite honest with you, because I think if you do something that changes the situation, for example, if the calculation here has been driven not by domestic wastewater flow, but by and WSAC and its jurisdictions have shown that they've reduced that inflow effect, then I think that they might consider looking at it again. If nothing's changed, I don't see any reason why they would revisit or entertain a new request. But if something's changed, they might.
And I think to Chuck's point, if we were to present to them collectively over the last 4 years, WSAC and our member jurisdictions have invested $10 million, $12 million on this list of I&I projects that have significantly impacted our system, affecting our average daily flow per residential connection, and then do the calculation and submit that with that, I think you would have, I agree, 6 months from now,
Yeah, that
probably is not, but 2 years from now, 18 months from now, 3 years from now, I think I have full confidence they would.
How far back did your data set go in your analysis? How many years was it? 1 year or is it?
Well, we 18 months in excruciating detail, 5 years as an overall view. And of course, our data set goes back as far as we want to go dig. So
The statute has you look at your wettest month of the last 12 months.
looked at our 12 months because it took so darn long that we moved our 12 months forward by 6 months. Was actually beneficial.
And part of the rosiness that you described, Chad, is based on, a lot of it is based on the fact that we are in a very dry period of time.
And we're no longer in a very wet period of time. Keep in mind, 2020 was the second wettest year in North Carolina history. So
I'm sure you've adjusted that in your numbers or tried to
they
sell.
wouldn't let me.
They won't
That's
let
the
us.
whole
That's the
point. They
problem.
wouldn't let us.
That's the problem.
Yeah,
So we're basing this whole analysis and their decision on the wettest year.
absolutely. Absolutely.
So-
Those flows are based on.
So what that means is it's very risky because we could have another very wet year and they could come back and say, I'm sorry, things fell apart and you need to give us more cushion.
It doesn't work that way.
What do you mean? Doesn't work that way?
They don't come in and rescind that number later on. That's basically the number that's been granted.
Forever.
It's my understanding. I've never heard of them coming back and rescinding that number for anyone. keeping in mind that the 120 gallons per day per bedroom is so absurdly conservative that no one has a basis of coming back and adjusting it, because municipalities have, 50, 55 gallon per day per bedroom calculations, and they grant them 70 or 80 gallons per day permitting, and they never get back up to that 70 or 80 gallons per day. Nobody ever actually realizes that.
Is there something in the law or in the rules that don't allow you to provide, to address a single year? I mean, if that's your only data set.
Nope.
But the law says that thou shall, doesn't say that you can, it says you shall adjust for excessive I and I.
But they wouldn't let you do that?
Correct.
That just seems so basic.
Yeah, and so not being able to work around that, we cook up 6 or 7 different ways
But
to
if it comes
calculate.
with 80 based on what I view as bad data, because it's 1 year of a bad year, then if we show them good data, that assumes they would go to 70 or 65.
They took a data set, a year-long data set, and cherry picked the month that gave the number that they wanted. Scientifically, it's not good. It's bad. It's bad science. It's bad.
It's not bad math, but it's bad science.
So you're suggesting that they had an idea that they were going to grant 80 all along and just went through this enterprise effort to create a number that creates 80.
I just think that they're in transit. Just want to fight about it.
I really like the idea of getting something sooner than later. But that being said, my big concern is, do you fight now to get what you think you should have? Or the idea of going back again later with a good math and science argument that obviously didn't go too well this time is a little weird to me. I guess worst case, they say no and you're stuck at 80, I guess.
I agree. If they were creating a scenario that math didn't count,
Right.
Who says that math will count next time?
Right.
Right.
But I do also, I see the harm though locally, if this goes on, if we dig our heels in and this goes on till next July, what effect does that have on us as well? That may be more catastrophic than getting 80 and not
Totally
70,
agree.
right?
I mean, I think if we're a month or 2
Yeah.
delayed, that's
I agree.
bad news.
And kind of an additional factor with that decision is the master planning, the permitting process that we're getting ready to start to negotiate our next permit beyond 34 at Rocky River will be directly to this group. Okay, so that's just another factor that has to be weighed into it that you just have to consider with it. And
Have we heard anything at all in response to our second ask where Bob and William found this exception, or Amy found this exception to the regulations that allow them to offer something less than the paper factor that we talked about? Have we heard anything at all about that process? You know what I'm talking about?
Over allocating.
Yeah.
William,
Something that Bob read in the statute.
Chad, in your letter, you asked the senator for 3 asks.
for to be able to go beyond 26 and a half.
You asked for the flow factor adjustment.
Correct.
You asked for this exception to the regulations that said that EMC could make an adjustment that was just set aside part of the paper capacity so that we didn't have to consider it, and we could add that to our numbers. Have we heard anything at all about that?
And that would allow us to accept paper capacity beyond 26 and a half to 27 and a half, 28, whatever that number became. And that there is precedent with that has been done before. But a key with that is that normally that request takes place when you're under construction, dirt's moving, you're under construction. You have all your financing in line, your project is fully funded. And so I think we're still a little early in the process for that request to the environment. It's not too early to start planning for that and start laying the groundwork for that, but to make the official ask, I think we're early.
I'm sorry, Chad. I thought Bob said that the only 2 requirements were 2. One, that you had to prove that you had a contract in place to go make the expansion that you're looking for. And 2, that you had the funding to go do the project that you're talking about. And as a result of that, that was the only things that were required of us in order to do what needs to be. Is that Amy back there who can tell me more about this?
No, you're right. That's what the statute says. But I think in anything that you do with the agency, it goes to what Chad's saying. Historically, they don't take it until that request, don't fully consider that request until you're to the point where they feel very comfortable that this is going to be done on a certain time frame. And so I think it'd be the same situation. Do we want to go to them now and ask and have them be upset by the fact that we aren't where they think we should be for it to be granted, and then have that battle, or wait just a little bit until we get some more stability to make that ask and make it a little more promising to them?
I mean, for example, we were talking with Crowder, and I won't mention the project, but there's another large project they're working on in our region that they were under contract for progressive design build of that plant in July of 2020. They came under contract with us in August of 21. They told us they will mobilize 6 to 9 months on our project than they will that other project. And that is not their fault. That is the owner's fault of taking a long time to move a project. So the point being, you can have a project, you can have a design build team under contract, ready to go, and then you could be 2 or 3 years before you ever move dirt because of dragging your feet, making decisions and designing and everything else. So they want to see dirt moving. They want to see the actual construction. So then they have extreme confidence in when that capacity is actually going to be online.
So
And I think that's from being burnt in the past.
How far far away is that you're going to see dirt moving? June?
Yes.
I guess where this plays in, the only place it's critical is we already know that we only have $1 million or $1.6 million or whatever it is for this first week. When we start allocating this to developers, it's going to be, a lot of these projects are way bigger than what we're going to allocate for one individual developer. It's going to have to be phased. But what we're saying to them is we can give you this guaranteed, and we can give you this maybe. If we get this approval, then some of those we can say, we'll give you this guaranteed and we'll give you that guaranteed too, because we have this ability to start allocating that future capacity. So that's where it's critical. And I don't think any of us know how that's going to affect developer A and B, whether that's going to kill deals because it's tied to financing and we can't do half a project. We got to do a full project. And those are the mysteries that everyone's going to be different. Some it's going to be fine. I can deal with that. Some are going to be, if I can't get the entire thing, even though it's phased, approved now, we can't move forward. So that's gonna be the challenge. And we can't solve all those problems, but it's incremental. We can solve some of them by doing it this way. So that's why it's important. Other than that, it's just a number, and it's just phasing is gonna happen anyway. It's just whether it's guaranteed phasing or whether it's conditional phasing.
Right. And I agree, the groundwork, we need to be working on that. The groundwork needs to be laid. We need to be getting prepared for that. I have reached out to Lincoln County. Lincoln County expanded their wastewater treatment plant here recently. They received authority to permit 5% beyond their capacity from the Environmental Management Commission, and that was recently. 5% for us would be, I think, 1.2 million, somewhere in that neighborhood. So that has happened. That has happened recently. That has happened in this region. So we're going to be doing more research into what they did, how they did that. What hoops did they have to jump through to make that happen? And really, I think I'm looking, that's probably the biggest potential for being a big chunk of capacity to support us in 2023. Till we get online in 2024. And I think that's what you're referencing there as well.
Do we need to approve this, or is any motion required for accepting the 80? I guess I should say.
What do you think, Michael?
I think we need the board's concurrence before we ask the jurisdictions to submit the letters.
Entertain a motion for 80.
Chairman, I don't like it any better than anybody else does, but I think the reality is what we gotta do. So I'll make the motion.
Got a motion on the floor.
I'll second that with the
This
exact.
one, and I'll second.
Any more discussion? All in favor, say aye. Thanks, Chad.
And just like last time, we will be sending these out electronically. They can be signed, sent back to us electronically to get them submitted, but then we will need the paper copy, original, sent back to WSAC so we can get those into the state. But it should make that happen quickly and get that in next week.
With the public comment, we do have some comments inside the room today. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And all things, all good things come to an end. And so for me, that end is in sight, and that is I'm leaving this board. Jennifer Hubbard, who is, stand up, Jennifer, so everybody can take a look at you, know who you are. Jennifer will be replacing me on this board. She'll be sworn in January. This has been one of the most rewarding things I've ever done to serve on this board. I've been here 20 years, I think. So I wish you all the best. I'll be here next, I think we're going to meet next month, ma'am. So I'll be here next month, and then I'll be here in January to see Jennifer sworn in, so I'll know I'm really gone. So, thank you all for giving me the opportunity to work with you and participate and go through the blood, sweat, and tears, the lawsuit and everything else. I retired from council 6 years ago. I agreed to stay on the WSAC board until we got the lawsuit resolved, which I thought was imminent. So 6 years later, I'm finally getting away. So thanks again. I've enjoyed working with all of you, staff, all the members of the board, and you've been a great team to work with. I know you'll continue to do great things. Jennifer will be a great fit for you. I enjoyed working with her on council, and she's got a unique perspective in the fact that she grew up in Kannapolis and lives in Concord and serves on the Concord City Council. Of course, most of you know her dad's Roger Haas. So she's got a really unique perspective that nobody else, I think, has, and haven't had dealings with both cities. So that's all. I wish you all the best. And if I can never do anything for you, I work cheap.
Thank you, Dave.
So I too will be gone after the December meeting as a result of the recent election. I definitely enjoyed learning a lot with this group for sure. I think I've got 6 years, not quite 20, but 6 is a long time. So wish you guys the best. And I'm going to temporarily appoint our public works director in January. Who knows what this new board's going to do after that? Your guess is as good as mine. So hopefully it won't be too disruptive for you. So I guess Mr. Legg will have to move up here in this seat.
That's the board's wishes.
Again, I've asked William about that. He checked the bylaws, and you can continue, move up as to the chairman and serve, or vice chairman and serve until July at the normal election, or the board can choose to go ahead and have elections and have a chairman and vice chairman. So it's whatever the board chooses at that time.
All right, with that, I'll entertain a motion to go into closed session for GS 143, 318, 11A1, A3, and A4. A motion on the floor, probably second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Stays, so goes. On the floor.
Second.
Second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.